Why Leonor will wait until 30. A stone courtyard at dawn. Cold light sliding across centuries of worn flagstones. Guards stand motionless, not because they are watched, but because they represent something older than watching itself. And at the center of that continuity stands Princess Leonor de Bourbon y Ortiz. The phrase hangs there, deceptively simple. It sounds personal, almost modern, but nothing about this decision belongs to the private realm. Because some crowns aren't inherited by age, they're earned by restraint. From the outside, the question seems obvious. Why wait? Why delay what history has often rushed? In other monarchies, marriages arrive early, almost on schedule, as if love itself were part of the machinery. But Spain does not treat time casually. Spain remembers what happens when continuity fractures. Here, national identity is woven into ritual, into patience, into visible discipline. The Spanish crown does not move at the pace of public curiosity. It moves at the pace of institutional survival. 2 minutes in, and the assumption most people carry quietly begins to weaken. That this is about romance, or youth, or image. It isn't. This is the living thread of continuity. And threads are never pulled without consequence. Spain is not a ceremonial monarchy floating above history. It is a constitutional system rebuilt after rupture, restored after silence, and stabilized through restraint. Every visible act of the heir is measured against memory. Not nostalgia, memory. The kind that informs law, caution, and credibility. Repetition matters here, because the phrase signals something deeper than delay. It signals control. In the United States, analysts don't read this as a personal choice. They read it as governance pacing. A signal that the institution is prioritizing legitimacy over symbolism. In Washington, stability is measured in predictability, and predictability begins with discipline. In the United Kingdom, the interpretation is quieter, almost appreciative. They recognize the language of restraint. They have lived through what happens when visibility outpaces preparation. Waiting, in this context, is not absence. It is rehearsal. Canada and Australia see it through a Commonwealth lens, how a future head of state grows into the role without distraction, without narrative noise. Germany reads it with constitutional clarity. A system protecting itself by slowing the variables it can still control. And this is where the story tightens. Because there is something deliberately unspoken in all of this. A silence that is maintained, not avoided. At 8 minutes, the mystery becomes clear without being named. Marriage changes status. It introduces another figure into the line of continuity. Another center of gravity. Another variable that cannot be easily unwound. Spain does not gamble with variables. The heir is still becoming. Not emotionally, institutionally. Military formation. Constitutional immersion. International exposure. Presence without dominance. Continuity is not abstract here, it is embodied in visible presence. Between 10 and 11 minutes, the strain becomes perceptible. Not a crisis yet, but a pressure. Public expectation grows. Media curiosity sharpens. The world, impatient as ever, looks for markers it understands. Marriage, family, photographs that resolve uncertainty, but institutions do not resolve uncertainty. They manage it. Spoken again, the phrase now carries weight. It is no longer a question. It is a boundary. At 14 minutes, the point of no return is reached rhetorically. Because once an institution demonstrates that it will not be rushed, it cannot suddenly accelerate without explanation. Waiting becomes part of the doctrine. Spain has learned, the hard way, that speed can be destabilizing, that symbolism without foundation invites erosion, that personal timelines must sometimes yield to national ones. This is not about denying life. It is about sequencing it. By 19 minutes, the future threat is visible on the horizon, though still safely distant. A political shift, a constitutional debate, a generational redefinition of monarchy itself. When that moment arrives, the heir must stand uncontested in authority, not divided in narrative. A premature marriage would not weaken the crown immediately. It would complicate it, and complexity is the enemy of continuity during transition. In the final moments, the image returns to where it began. Stone, stillness, presence, not as postponement, but as preparation. Because some crowns aren't inherited by age, they're earned by restraint. And as Spain watches, and the world observes quietly from across oceans and institutions, one truth remains intact. This story is still unfolding. The timing is deliberate, the silence is intentional, and what comes next has not yet been decided.